make your dreams come true sometimes seems impossible. Now, Henry Ford knew a few things about that. This shed you see behind me is actually where Henry Ford started about 100 years ago. So obviously Ford haven't always been a huge global international car company. When he started, he obviously didn't invent the car, Carl Benz did, but he had the idea of bringing the automobile to everybody. And he had the idea of creating the assembly line, something that was unheard of that point in time. And when he did it, he actually changed the car industry forever. Those type of things can still happen today. Even though today we of course have brands that are so iconic, that are so giant, so overwhelming. If you think about these brands behind me, they have amazing reach all over the world. Coca-Cola, distribution, marketing budgets, huge facilities. And I'm sure if you go in a plane and take a trip over Africa and jump out the plane in a parachute and land somewhere in Africa, there may not be any electricity, no food, no water, but within 5 miles you can probably buy a Coca-Cola. That's how powerful they are. So when a guy suddenly had the idea to start another soft drink, which was not just about tasting good, but about getting energy. It was about delivering something different. And that was Chalio that started Red Bull. People told him that was insane. He was never going to be able to make it. He knew, or probably thought, it was nearly impossible, but he still took the risk. He still did it. He believed in his dream. He had a gut feel, and he went out and did it. Richard Branson, Virgin Airlines, when he had the idea about starting a new airline, that's not so many years ago. Just think about what it cost to buy planes, to get the licenses, everything else that's involved. Now, he got one license and one plane. And the reason he did it was because when he flew, he felt there might be something else we can do for the customer. We could change it. We could make it more fun. Maybe we could make a bar inside the plane where you get a drink. Maybe get a haircut at the lounge. Things that was never done before. And actually, you can get those things. And he started Virgin Airlines. And today, that's probably one of the most famous airlines in the world. And the last one, Dyson. Now, he invented a new vacuum cleaner because he thought all the current one sucks, which they kind of do. But he invented, of course, the one without the bag. And he went around and presented this dream, this invention, to all the makers of vacuum cleaners. And they all rejected him and laughed at him and said, it's never going to work. So what he did was, he obviously started it himself. And years later, he became the leading seller of vacuums here in the US and in many other markets in the world. And the same people that rejected him are today copying him. So it shows that it is possible to go out even today and make the dream reality. It is possible if you take the risk. Now, when I was 8 years old, I was sitting in the back seat of my father's Saab 96 back in Denmark. And suddenly I saw that silver Maserati passing me, and I got butterflies in my stomach. And you have to think about Denmark as a small socialistic country where seeing something like a Maserati is like seeing a UFO or Bigfoot. It's very rare. So that was a huge event. And at that point, I knew I wanted to do something with cars. I didn't know if I was going to be an engineer. I didn't know if I was going to wash cars, build cars, sell cars. I just knew I wanted to do something with that fascinating thing called a car. Now, so what I did was I kept on drawing cars, way beyond my age, so to speak. So in school, instead of taking notes, I kept on drawing cars, just like that notebook you see there. And eventually, I had a meeting with a counselor when I was about 12, 13 years old. And I remember she said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to be a car designer. And she said, well, there's nothing called a car designer. You can be an engineer. So that was very discouraging, but I kept the dream alive. I kept on sneaking my drawings in here and there. And even through college, I did that, which meant I didn't do very good in school. But after college, I got a job, the closest I could find was a technical draftsman. And even at that job, I started drawing cars. And eventually my dad said, well, why don't you write a letter to a car company. So I did. I wrote a letter to Volvo saying I would like to be a car designer because in Denmark there is no car industry. And Volvo wrote back saying, well, look, you don't have an education, but we can recommend a school in California called Arts and College of Design in Pasadena. And they have another branch in Europe, in Switzerland, which is the same school. So I took all my drawings, threw them in my old rusty Alfa Romeo, which is sort of a European Honda, for those who don't know the car. It's a little bit better. And I drove down to Switzerland and got accepted to that school. A few years later, I started at BMW in Germany, in Munich. And that was really when I started to learn about the car industry and how complicated it is. And the dream I had about sort of creating my own car company sort of faded quickly away as I realized it's hundreds of millions of dollars, it's very complicated. And I had a very exciting time. I got to design a BMW Z8 sports car, which eventually got into a James Bond movie, which were way beyond my dreams until I saw the film and they cut it in half. But then, so I migrated to Aston Martin and did a couple of things there. But the point is that I did learn about the industry, and I got to do some fantastic stuff, but I still thought that there must be something more. I realized that the passion I had as a kid with those exciting cars, looking at the cars sort of in the last 20, 25 years, a lot of that passion has kind of disappeared. And you look at some of the 3 best-selling cars today, I'm a car designer and I can barely say which ones they are. So what happened in the last 20 years is cars have become more of an appliance. They used to be all about emotion and fun, and they used to be fairly cheap to run. And now they become an appliance. Gasoline is expensive. In some countries, you get taxed on them. And on top of that, we start feeling a bit guilty about driving a car because it pollutes. It uses a lot of gasoline. So I thought to myself, what if you could create a car that took all the environmental aspects that we know is possible and basically unite that with the emotional side of a vehicle? Why does, electric cars or small fuel-efficient cars always have to look dorky? Why can't we make a beautiful, gorgeous car? So the what if was really saying, instead of a normal roof, what about putting a solar panel on the car that can help charge the car? When I was working at Aston Martin, like all car manufacturers, we would go to Brazil and pick up, the wood in Brazil and bring it back, go with a flamethrower, sand it down and put it in the car after it was lacquered. And I thought, what if we just get the wood from the California fires? We don't need flamethrowers, it's already done. And it sounded funny at that time, but it can be done. So that was something I thought about. And I also thought about, if you think about how the car is designed, it hasn't really changed in the last 100 years. When we first developed the car, you saw a car on a single road in the middle of nowhere. And that's still how the advertising looks today. You jump in the car and you drive around on a free open road. But reality, of course, is we sit in traffic like here, like you see behind me. That's reality. That's how a lot of us drive to work every day. So I thought, what if you can create a car where when you sit in traffic and you listen to music, your air conditioning on, you need power. Well, what if it's just electric? And what if, because you want the freedom, that if you want to drive from LA to Las Vegas or New York or San Francisco, after maybe about 50 miles, the gasoline engine turns on to create electricity while you drive. Why can't we do that? So I thought there must be a way we can do that. A lot of people, of course, as you talk about these type of ideas, start telling you, can't be done, is it possible, there's doubters, but I still said, what if? I decided I was going to take that risk. Now, one of the two things that sort of inspired me was, first of all, everybody saying it couldn't be done. That gave me sort of extra fuel and power. And the second thing was that I thought even the biggest car companies in the world, they still are only run by humans. In fact, any giant companies in the world, they might look giant, but behind them is a human being. And I'm a human being, and these guys, they need to sleep, eat, and do everything else that we do, and they have the same problems. So I thought, why couldn't I then do it? That was part of my feeling of being able to take that risk. Now, when you stand on that cliff and are ready to jump off into the ocean, and when I did that, I did see an island out there, and I felt like I could swim there, and as soon as I jumped in the ocean, suddenly that island kept on moving. So it's pretty clear that it isn't as easy as it sounds. And new is never that easy. But for those of us who take the risk and jump in the ocean, I think that doesn't matter. We still feel that it's worth to pursue the dream, it's worth to do it. And one of the reasons for me is because the doubters that are out there, they're rarely the builders. And those who are the skeptics are never really the inventors. And I feel there is a possibility to go against the naysayers, take the risk, go out there and follow your dream and get people behind you, because there's a lot of us out there that believe that dreams are possible. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.